Good evening, good people. It's good to see you all. My name is Dr. Ramon Goings, founder of Done Dissertation, and our goal is to help doctoral students like you write and defend your dissertation in record time. On this episode of Done Dissertation Live Q&A, I'm going to talk through some questions we've been getting in our community chat from folks about different things they're experiencing with the dissertation. And if you're someone watching and you actually want to ask your question live and have some interaction and get some feedback on what you might be experiencing or dealing with, you can join live. I have enough time today for probably about 5 folks if they want to join. And so if you're interested in actually being on the show live, all you have to do, and I'm going to pull up the link here, if you go to www.thedonedissertation.com/live, what it'll do is take you to a form. You just complete the form. It'll take you about 30 seconds to complete. And then from there, it'll give you access to the link to actually join the show. And I would love to engage with you with Q&A and things that you have in real time. Because I know sometimes folks are trying to figure out, how do I get help on the spot? And this is your opportunity to do so. And I'm trying to do these, like I said, we do this about every 2 weeks or so. Again, just to provide some value for the community of scholars. But again, I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in. As always, before we get this thing kicked off, let us know where you're coming from in the comments, what your dissertation topic is, where you are in the process. Again, we love to connect and interact with you all, so please let us know. Wherever you're watching this, on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever you're watching, we definitely want to hear from you in terms of where you are, what you're working on for your dissertation, because again, a lot of times there is community amongst each other. And you never know, someone that's joining right now might be the person that can help give you some insight on your dissertation. So always make sure that you're putting your information out there so that folks can connect with you. It's a small world in academia, so I definitely know if you all are watching something like this, let folks know what you're doing, because again, you might just be one connection away from your next opportunity. And so I'm just dropping in LinkedIn real quick to see who our folks are and then make sure everything's up and running. But if anybody's on, if you just let me know that you can hear me okay, and then we'll be good and we'll get into some questions that we have for today. So just let me know in the chat if you can hear me all right. And again, we want to engage in this conversation around things related to your dissertation. If you want to be on the show and you actually have a question that you want to ask live and get some feedback on the question that you have, feel free. You can either drop it in the comments, or if you actually want to come on camera and enjoy and actually engage in this conversation, all you do is go to www.thedonedissertation.com/live. And if you happen to be watching this on a replay and you want to be on a future episode, come to the link, complete the form, and I will send you an email when you're on the queue for the next episode that we are going to shoot on the live show. Now, again, for folks, let me know. Okay, thanks, Renee. Audio is good. Perfect. Glad to see audio is perfect. Perfect. All right. So let's get into today's situation. So one of the things is that we have a community of scholars, of folks that are engaged in our community, and we have a text message community where we reach out to folks in our community with affirmations every Sunday. Shout out to Renee for putting that together, who's CEO of Done Dissertation. So you'll get affirmations every Sunday. We send you links when we have different events coming up, like our lit review workshop that's happening next week. So if you're looking for help with your lit review, feel free to join the lit review workshop. If you go to www.thedonedissertation.com/workshop, you get access to where you can secure a ticket for our upcoming workshop. And so as part of our community, right, is that when we send our text, like folks text back and we actually respond and hear your questions, hear your concerns, things that you're going through. And there are a couple of things that I've received recently that I wanted to read and then give these people some responses who have reached out. And so the first one is shout out to my friend Monica. Thank you so much for sending your chat. The question that you had, so I can share, is that you said, I may be actually walking away from my dissertation. My chair has worked against me, causing me to repeat a chapter too many times. And thank you for the communication and videos. And what happens when you can't trust your chair? Monica, that is a great question, when you can't trust your chair. This is something that we are trying to do at Done Dissertation to help support faculty and students. So I have a book that I wrote for faculty called The Finish System, and it teaches dissertation chairs how to create a system in order to support doc students. But one thing, Monica, I want you to know, because I know some about your context and where you are a student, is that sometimes you have to recognize that some universities, it seems that maybe have some embedded just structures and barriers that they don't even know exist. And some of this is around policies and procedures they have in place. As Renee would describe it, more so as almost like a conveyor belt system, where we want to get the same leveled product out of an institution. And in order to do that, some institutions feel like we have to have these certain benchmarks and line items and things we have to check off before a student can progress. And Monica, and probably your situation where you go, you're getting caught up in that. And that can be extremely frustrating, right? And so one of the things I want you to do first is recognize, first we take some internal reflection. Is it the chair or is it something that I can control? So like it depends on what type of feedback that you're getting. This is why when we have folks that are in our velocity coaching program, we can then assess what type of feedback you're getting versus what you need to do to rectify that feedback. So for instance, if you're getting feedback on that particular chapter that says, I don't know, say the research design is flawed, and it doesn't align with your research questions. That's a situation for you as the learner, as a student, that you may have to rectify in order to get through and get this proposal together in a way that makes sense for your chair. So if you're getting that type of feedback, if you're getting the type of feedback in particular around, I see a lot of times around when you're even describing the literature, that's another place that folks get caught up in. And so if you're starting to get feedback that is just saying that's unclear, you're doing more summarizing and synthesizing, sometimes those are some of the things that you can handle, but it does take some support from a chair to give you insight. This is why we do a lot of our workshops, because we know we won't be able to work with everyone in our velocity coaching program, but we provide, affordable, but really solid and really impactful workshops for you all so that you get the insights that you need to navigate the dissertation successfully. And so first is like taking an assessment. Is it something that you have control over? That's one thing. And it's like in making sure that every time that you get feedback that you're accurately addressing the feedback in a way that shows your chair that you have done the things that they have required you to do. Now, when it's gotten to a point where you've done that and you're still getting the type of back and forth, sometimes it might be getting an outside perspective. This is why we work with a lot of our clients on, because just to give an example, we had a client who was getting some similar pushback, but their study, there was a couple of things that the chair was correct on and why they were actually holding them back. We fixed those things and helped them kind of see where the flaws were, and they were able to quickly address them and turn their document back around. That happens a lot. And so, but it may come to a point for you, Monica, where it's at a stage where, they're just being nitpicky. And so at that point, this is when we have to sometimes leverage policies and procedures at the university to get the support that you might need. So probably I would recommend is that you look into your handbook, see what options you have as a student. Is there a way, do they have some type of mediation where it's like when a student is doing the things that the chair is asking with this chair still not satisfied, is there some mediation that the university provides to help you all come to some type of formal agreement? And or a policy where if you need to, you move on to a different chair. That sometimes happens. But I would say before you give up, we want to see so many bright students like you, Monica, finish. And I don't want you to give up too soon before we kind of go through all the procedures. And even if you decide that maybe that university is not the right fit, maybe we find a different university in context that gives a better support structure for doctoral students. So I can't say without knowing more about what you're experiencing. This is why we work with our clients. It's very closely in our velocity coaching program to really give you more insight about the situation that you are experiencing outside of the text message I have. Right. And so I want you to be aware that as I'm responding to your concern. The other thing I would consider is before you decide to part ways is figuring out what is it that they really want and can they show me an example. So sometimes some of these things are rectified simply by interacting with the faculty member, you asking the questions about what you might need, and then you say, hey, can you provide me an example of what you're asking me to do? That is good for a couple of reasons, because it allows you and it puts the onus on the faculty member to then provide some type of insight for you and give you an example. Then once you have the example, you can start to maybe apply the example and see now, does that change what happens in your next iteration with the chair in terms of the feedback? Again, this feedback loop thing is really important. Our next workshop in upcoming in March, I believe, Renee, correct me if I'm wrong on this. I think our next workshop coming up for March is on feedback. Or on feedback, and then I think in April we're going to do stuff around working with your chair, because we know those are things that impact a lot of doctoral students, and sometimes we don't always have the strategy in order to navigate that correctly. And so, Monica, what I would say for you is just to make sure that we exhaust all the things before we decide to say, all right, you know what, this is it, I'm not doing this anymore. Because again, maybe just changing chairs might be the solution, but let's exhaust some other options, because the only downside I would say when anybody watching, when you change your chair, is that you have to consider the time that it takes to kind of get a new chair up to par where you're going, and they may have a totally different perspective on your document than your current chair has. That might put you in a whole different direction. So sometimes where it may look like the grass is green on the other side, sometimes it's not always like that. A lot of times it is, but not always. And so those are some of the pros and cons and things we have to weigh when we are considering, should we change chairs or should it be time to move on? But yeah, when that trust is broken, we have to find ways to maybe have the university step in as a, some type of mediation. I know my university is developing this where, they have faculty that come in to work with the faculty and student to figure out where the tear in the relationship is and then see how we can, repair it. So that would be my suggestion and thoughts to you as you think and work through this, Monica. But I want to say thank you so much for your text message. It was extremely helpful. And so if you're someone who actually wants to, be part of our text message community, here's what I'll do is you can text, and I'll put this on the screen so you all have access to it. And go ahead and just so I know that you all are coming from here, just go hashtag Q. All I need is these two. Actually, I'm sorry. We'll go live QA. So live QA. All you need is text that, include the hashtag to 301-701-2466. And you'll get a text message back, but as long as I'll know it's you, we'll send a text message back just asking you to put your information in just so we have it in our contacts. So when we reach out to you, it's by your first name, and so we can actually interact with you. And so again, just text hashtag live QA to 301-701-2466. And if they come in, I do see them in real time, and so I definitely will get your request to join the community. And if you have questions and things that arise for you, just drop them in the comments. Again, if you want to come on the show live, this is something that we are doing. And so if you want to come on live and ask your question tonight, feel free to do so. You can go to www.thedonedissertation.com/live. You'll fill out a quick form, and then it'll give you access to a link to join me on the platform to engage in the questions. And so if you do have a question, I would love to have you live on the show. I want to make this interactive for students because, again, you all have great questions that a lot of students are dealing with. So it's not just you out there. It's a lot of folks dealing with the same types of questions. And so your insight might be helpful for other folks. And so if you want to be part of it, if not this episode in the future, just go ahead to the link, www.thedonedissertation.com/live, fill out the form, and then from there, we'll reach out. You'll get an email back and letting you know the details. All right, so the next thing I want to consider is that another question that we got recently, and let me pull it up, is I had somebody reach out who we've been interacting with, and they mentioned that they were, dealing with some issue with the chair, similar to what Monica described. However, the difference for them was they said, I haven't reached out to my chair in a while because I've been swamped with work. And now they're going to get back to their dissertation because now things have kind of died down with work. And so the question that comes up from this particular student who reached out is that, how do I, finish writing my dissertation when I feel that I'm just too busy? And so I think this question is really important to consider because when you feel, busy at work, everything gets in the way. And you all have made a commitment saying that you want to finish your dissertation. But if I looked at what you spend your time on, the time doesn't always reflect that. And so I know we have jobs, we have all these things to do. Like I was a full-time teacher where I was, in my doc program and writing a dissertation. I was working in higher ed as a staff member. So I know what it's like to work full-time and try to write and finish a dissertation. So I get that dilemma that we are in, especially for you folks, in the case for the student who is very much a leader in charge of a whole unit for the company. And so when you're in these situations, you have to figure out, where do I find and make the time for my dissertation versus maybe just trying to find it? Because if you try to find it, our lives are so complex and busy these days, and so many other things. If you got a family, you got, you want to be sane, you want to enjoy the weekends, you want to watch some TV, like you just want to have a integrated lifestyle. There will never be enough time to make time. What you may have to start learning how to do is in order to find the time. What you may have to start doing is actually making the time. So what it might be is just like, for some folks who are in high leadership positions, it might be taking an extra day off of work every other week. So maybe you get a longer weekend to engage in some writing. Maybe for some folks, it's putting that imaginary meeting on the calendar, meeting in quotes, that you go to, that no one has a meeting with you except it's a meeting with yourself. And so you might get that 1 hour that you spend to write your dissertation and work on it, and then you move on and do something else. So that could be a route that you go. For some of you all, it just might be, hey, how do I get some other supports in place where now I have the support I need to make the time to write my dissertation? Especially if you want to finish. Like, you can't tell me you want to finish and then you don't want to make the time to finish. The things just don't gel, and it's no wonder why you haven't finished your dissertation. And sometimes all it takes is for you to make the time, and this is transformation that can happen. If you go on our YouTube channel, there's an interview I did with one of our former clients. Shout out to a couple clients had the same situation where they were very busy, and they had reached out to us a 2 year prior to get some dissertation help and said, nah, it's not the right time. I don't want to invest, all of these things. And then they turned back around and recognized, like, oh my God, I'm still in the same place that I was the last time we talked, in a year, 2 years later, 3 years later. And then literally for some folks, as soon as they come in, we give them the strategy, we give them the infrastructure on how to actually knock this dissertation out, and then they finish quickly. But sometimes it just takes you, because sometimes when you invest in yourself in this type of way, it actually forces you to make the time that you might need to actually write your dissertation. And so, like, if you're in that boat, it might be time to get the help if you haven't been able to do this in the way that you wanted to on your own. And so if you're interested in learning about what we do at Done Dissertation to help students like yourself, if you go to www.velocitydissertation.com, you can learn more about our program, schedule a consultation with Renee to see how we can get you to the finish line, because it's really important to be mindful of, like, how do I prepare and get myself in the right mindset, make the time, and then have the structure in order to write the dissertation quickly. Because I know you all want to be done. So if you're that determined that you want to be done, but your way hasn't worked quite yet, we got the support that you might need to finish. And so what I would recommend you do is go to www.velocitydissertation.com. And so I see a question in the comments from Ava. It says, do you advise reading Done Dissertation before one starts a doctoral program? Yeah, so if you're referring to the book 14 Secrets to a Done Dissertation, yes, I most certainly do recommend. And I've heard from a lot of students that they say it's very helpful for them to actually start out their program. And so let me grab a copy of it real quick. Again, it's real time, so I'm going to grab a copy for you all. So the one thing to consider is this book, 14 Secrets to a Done Dissertation. If you go to our main website, you can just click on the books tab on donedissertation.com, and you can grab a copy. I'll sign it and send it to you. But yeah, what I would recommend is, definitely it's a quick read. Look, it's very quick, 80 pages front, 100 pages total, probably with everything. But I wrote it very short because as doc students, you don't have a lot of time to read a bunch of stuff. Y'all got all this literature and all these other things to read. And so you don't have time to be spending just reading this. And so this is why I wrote a short, actionable book that can help you move this along. And so, yes, I do recommend, if you're getting ready to start a doctoral program, this book can be very helpful, because some of the strategies and practices that you can put into place now will set you up for success with your dissertation when you get to that point, a year, 2, 3 years, 4 years down the line, depending on your doc program. And so, Ava, let me know, are you just got into a new doctoral program? Let me know what's going on with you in terms of your experience so far. First semester, second semester, or are you just literally got enrolled in one and you're getting ready to start maybe in the fall? Let me know where you are in the process. Again, I hope this is helpful. And if you want to be on the show, feel free. I love to have guests interact. It's hard when I'm talking to the camera and, trying to imagine what you all are thinking. So if you want to ask your question outside of just put it in the comments, which is fine as well. If you go to www.thedonedissertation.com/live, I'd be happy to engage with you with your questions live. If you want to be on camera, come and join me. We can definitely have a conversation, chop it up. All right, and I see a comment, and you say, I brought the book on Amazon last year. The YouTube channel you have and Facebook page are helpful. Well, I'm so glad that they're helpful. Renee and I do a lot to really support you all with this content, and Renee is really spearheading, making sure that we're hearing what you all are saying as we're designing content for future weeks, months ahead. And so these questions and things that you all provide us, during these types of Q&A sessions at our workshops, all these things are extremely helpful as we refine what we do and make sure that what we're providing is actually, give you the insight that you might need. Oh, Ava, I see you say I can get online. How can we get on camera? So what you will do, if you go to the link, and I'll pull up on the screen in one sec. Sorry, I have a switch here. I'm just trying to make sure where I have the correct link for you so you have the right one. Here we go. If you just go to this website, donedissertation.com/live, click on that. Just fill out the form, the media request form. Once you submit your information, you'll get a link to join me in a Zoom room, essentially, and then I'll be able to bring you into the broadcast. And so again, if you want to be on, feel free. And then once I see you in the waiting room, I'll bring you in, and then I'll bring you up on screen, and we can have a conversation for sure. And Monica, okay, thank you for addressing my concerns. No problem. I'm glad I was able to help, and I hope that some of those insights were helpful for you. Again, just we're always in real time responsive to where you all might be and what you're trying to do with your dissertation. So I'm glad, again, you have some steps that you can, at least do before you get to the point where you're like, I'm going to step away. But I understand sometimes you do have to make a move for yourself that's in your best interest. So don't take what my suggestion is to say that might not be the best move, but I at least want to exhaust all the other steps before we get to that point. And so again, if you have questions, let me know in the comments. If you want to be on the show live, feel free. You can do so by going to www.thedonedissertation.com/live. Fill out the form, and then it'll give you a link to join me on the show, and I'll bring you in. And thank you for folks. I see a couple people who have signed in and joined our text message community. So I just want to say thank you all so much. And again, if you're interested in being part of our community, what you can do is just type text hashtag live QA to 301-701-2466, and that way you'll become part of the community. You'll get a text message from us just asking you to put your contact information in, like your name, just again, so when we send messages to you, we have you in the future. And Alal, thank you so much. I see that you have joined. Thank you so much for a couple of folks who have joined while we've been on live. All right, so a question that I've had as of late that I want to share, again, as folks may have questions and things that they might be thinking about. One question that's been popping up, and this is from another student, and I've had this question in a number of different ways, but essentially the question is, why is the literature review so hard? Essentially, is the question. I see a lot of folks who are trying to figure out, how to write a literature review so they can get out and finish their dissertation. And so one of the things that I will say, when you're trying to write the dissertation, why it feels so hard is because a lot of times the dissertation feels very hard because you have no strategy. What you're doing is just going and thinking that the literature review is just writing about what other people have said. That is an aspect of it, but the literature review is actually much more than just doing that. The literature review also includes bringing these authors who have been writing about your topic in areas of research, bringing them together in conversation. That doesn't happen with them alone. That happens because you are the informed writer and researcher, and you've understood their perspectives, and you found a way to mesh their story together to kind of have a storyline about your topic, and basically what these scholars have all found and what they all have started to understand about your topic, and you're able to kind of showcase, hey, you all have thought about it in this way, which has been so helpful to where my work is grounded in. But here's a place where you all haven't considered, and that's where I want this work to go with my dissertation or research topic. Like if I'm writing for publication, it's the same process. But a lot of times when we go to write a literature review, we don't have a strategy. That's why we're hosting a lit review workshop. I would say one of the top questions out of all the questions is around, how do I write this literature review? And you're in luck because I actually like writing literature reviews. Like they're one of my favorite parts of an article to write is actually the literature review. And that is really critical. And so I really want you to consider, if you need the support and you need help with your literature review, go to www.donedissertation.com/workshop. Our lit review workshop is next week, and I'd love to have you on. And I see that you are in the Zoom. I will bring you in momentarily. So I do see you on. I'll bring you in a second. And so again, if you want to be on live, I have enough for time for about 4 more people. If folks want to join in live. Again, if you want to join the Q&A live, go to www.thedonedissertation.com/live. All right, let's admit. And y'all give me a second. I'm going to bring our guest on if they're able. Hey, Allah, give me 1 second. I'm going to bring you in, okay? And so I'm doing this in real time. So when I have folks in here, let's see here. Let me bring it in. Let me see if this will work for us today. If not, I'll do it a different way and bring you in differently. And so give me one moment. Sorry, y'all, just doing this tech stuff real time. And so again, give me one moment. Bring you in. Camera. All right. All right, good sir. Allow. Is it allow?
Yeah, yes, you
Yes.
got
Give
it
me one
right.
second because I can't hear you. I think it's my audio. So give me one moment, and I will bring you in. And everybody might be able to hear. So if you can hear him, let us know in the comments. You all might be able to hear. I think it's just on my end. This is sometimes the struggle with some of this technology stuff. You got to have all this stuff all connected for it all to work. Let's see. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I
I
can
can't hear
hear
you
you. It
yet, but I
works
will get it
perfect.
situated here momentarily. Let's see. Oh, y'all can. Okay. Yep, y'all can, but I can't. But give me one second. We'll get this up and running. Yeah, I didn't know if y'all knew part of my job at life was I used to be I had to learn all this tech stuff too to get it all going. Let's see, input, output. All right, talk for me now.
Okay, you can hear me now? It
Yes, I can hear
works?
you now. All right, there we go. And it's allow. Is that correct?
You got it.
All right,
Allow.
perfect.
Yep.
Ilal, so pleasure to meet you, Ilal. So yeah, I'd love to hear about what questions you have. First, let us know where are you a student, what part of the process are you in right now, and then we'll get to your question.
All right. I'll just introduce myself very briefly. So my name is Elal, and I'm an MED student working on a Master's of Education program
Okay.
at Lincoln University, the first HBCU in Lincoln, Pennsylvania. So I finish up the program in May, and
Okay.
I'm currently applying to different doctoral programs in education.
Cool.
And I got accepted to one program, and I'm waiting to hear back from a couple. And I always been following your work, Dr. Ramon, on Done Dissertation, and I actually got the book in the summertime
Oh, dope.
on Amazon. I just wanted to share that with you. And I already started the book, even though I'm not in the doctoral program yet.
Yeah.
And the book and the text message group and really the Facebook group has been really helpful, like guiding students throughout the dissertation process, even though I didn't start it. And you talked about strategies to overcome procrastination and the literature review. That's really big, really gathering up the research.
Yeah.
So really appreciate that. And it's really a good journey. You really guide the student towards on finishing the dissertation. So I really appreciate that.
No problem. Thank you. I appreciate that. Appreciate you. So, what question? How can I help or support you as you're thinking about making that transition into a doc program? What are you thinking?
And would it be just at the dissertation writing stage that a student would come on with done dissertation program, or how does that work?
Yeah. We work with folks in our coaching programs and things when they're at the dissertation phase. So usually for you, that will be, you'll get into your doc program, you'll do coursework, and then depending how the program's structured, you may have a comprehensive exam process or maybe some type of capstone. Every university does it different. Every program does it very different. And then from that point, you'll be working on, your dissertation, which is usually the final step in the doctoral journey. And so that's when we work with students because we want you, as part of the dissertation process, you'll have a dissertation chair who's like essentially similar to maybe a master's program. If you have like a master's thesis, you may have a chair or advisor that helps you as the leader in terms of your thesis committee. But at the PhD doctoral level, yeah, you will have the same situation. You have a chair, and then you'll have maybe 2 to 4 committee members who are at your university or maybe someone external who are all guiding you. Your chair is the main leader in it, but the committee members are giving expertise because maybe on your topic, maybe your methodology, all these things. And so at that point, we work with students because that's the part where folks get tripped up. It's easy to get through the coursework because there's structure. A professor says, hey, your paper's due on the 25th. You're like, all right, cool. I'm going to have that paper submitted on the 25th. But when we get to the dissertation, sometimes it gets a little vague because it's just like, oh, I'll write and do it and submit it whenever because there's no hard deadlines. And so that's when we come into place and give the structure that is missing or similar to what you have during your coursework to help students propel through the process. But it's hard to do that when you don't have a chair in place and don't have a committee. So yeah, we work with people at the end, but this is why we do this type of content, our stuff, all of our stuff on YouTube to help students as they're matriculating through the program to put some of these structures in place so that by the time they get to the dissertation phase, they have all the pieces, they know what's to expect, in the process. And so you're way ahead of the game for even just thinking forward about like the end of the road with getting your doctorate.
And can you talk a little bit about the literature review class and how that works
Yeah.
and
So
when it's going to start?
Yeah, so the literature review is going to be, I think this workshop is next Thursday. I'm sorry, it's 25th. The dates are I'll pull it up in a second. But the literature review workshop is really to help because I say out of all the chapters and areas in the dissertation where students typically struggle the most is the literature review. Because what ends up happening is that at the doctoral level, you have to, of course, read a lot of the scholars in your area. But then in the literature review, you have to bring them all together in order to showcase, hey, they've talked about and done these things in the area before, and here's where what they're missing, and here's where my dissertation is needed because we want to fill this. They call it the gap in the literature. We want to fill this gap that's been missing in this area. And so for a lot of folks, again, it's just not a structure to it. It's just kind of like it makes you feel when you say literature review. Sometimes how it's taught in undergrad is just I just write about these researchers, right? I write about these papers I read. And it reads like an annotated bibliography where it's just like scholar A, whatever that paper was about, scholar B, whatever that was about. Whereas a dissertation literature review, you as the researcher, because you are an expert and you know all the different players in your area, you got to bring them together to have a dialogue versus it just being writing about scholar A said this, scholar B said this. We want to bring them in conversation. So that's what we're going to be talking about at the workshop in terms of how to structure the literature review and the philosophy and a four-step process we call UTIP in order to write the literature review effectively. Again, it's great for the dissertation. It's helpful for folks who might be doing it for class, but it's really geared towards the student who is writing their dissertation and has to reach a certain level of writing in order to get through their program. And so, yeah, that's what we're going to be doing at the workshop and really thinking through the lit review because that's going to be one of those things, once you start a program, you'll probably see a lot of assignments you'll have in classes will be lit reviews, and sometimes if we don't approach writing them correctly when we're in our classes, we'll develop bad habits that then when we get to the dissertation, faculty will say, no, I don't want you to write a literature review like that anymore. And so that's why we want to make sure that students don't have that type of experience.
Right. And I know you maybe talked about it on YouTube, but what really motivated you to start a dissertation coaching program?
Now, you asked some great questions, man. I love the questions. It's cool. To start the program. So it actually started, my story is that I started as a student who struggled as a writer. When I first I got my doctorate at Morgan State University in urban educational leadership. And so when I first got into the program, I took a class called Contemporary Issues in Urban Education. And as part of the class, we had to write a literature review. This is why I say I know the literature was painful because I went through that pain myself. And so I wrote this literature review. I thought, based on the skill set I had, I thought that it was good. But my professor, shout out to Dr. Shockley, he now is at the University of Houston, but he was my professor at the time. He was like, put an X on it. He was like, nah, Ramon, this is not good. I need for you to get a writing coach or editor to improve it. And then he said, actually, on the third page, he told me, he said, just go ahead and rewrite this and get it back to me later because it's not ready. And I didn't understand what was happening. And so, I started to try to teach myself a process to improve as an academic writer, which first started reading a lot of different authors. So if I give you any suggestions now, it's like read different types of literature in terms of scholarly literature. So it might be in your area of education, but you might read in psychology, sociology, anthropology. Just read a little bit around so you can see how these authors think. Because my first goal was to figure out how do they think, and then I try to extract what do they think, how do they write. And I just started emulating some of the styles that I liked in some of the reading. And then so by the time I got to the end of my doctoral program, I wrote my dissertation in 7 months from start to finish. I started publishing a lot as a student. And then, I went to a faculty position right out. But faculty said, hey, you figured this thing out. Can you help students in our program? And I just started helping people as an editor, looking at their dissertations. But all the time their questions were, hey, why is my chair saying my theoretical framework is not aligned to my research questions, or why are they saying I'm doing more summarizing than synthesizing in the literature review? So I was answering those questions, and someone said, hey, you should be a coach, like you could help people with this. And that's literally how it started. I started working with students kind of one-on-one like this, and then it got to a point when I wrote that book, the 14 Secrets book, then the business expanded, and then we grew into a group model. Now we help hundreds of students, write and defend a dissertation. And yeah, Renee and I kind of grew the company. Now we're working with universities to help support all of their students. And now we have an arm where we're supporting faculty as well. So it's grown, but yeah, it just started from a struggle. So a lot of times businesses start from a pain point, and the pain point was my own. So I had to figure out a process. And now what I teach, a lot of these lessons I'm teaching you all in these videos are things that I know from experience and actually things I've seen work.
And that's really good because I reached out to you in the summertime about different programs and everything, and you told me University of Maryland, we don't have an online program because I was kind of looking
Yeah.
for online programs. Then
Yeah.
when I talked to the professor in my master's program, he said it's always beneficial, even if you don't do online, to do a hybrid program. But the best type of learning is in-person learning, where you could really learn from other learners in the learning environment. And I was reading a little bit about you and the Dunn dissertation, and it just said that you investigate and you research about different historical HBCUs and universities
Yeah.
from education and society. Can you talk a little bit about how that work really informs the work you're doing now with Dunn dissertation?
Yeah, so at the core of my research agenda is on success of students, right? And so I would consider and pitch myself and consider myself as a student success scholar. And so part of that work, I always, when I was as a doc student, I was reading a lot of literature because I wanted to study high achieving students. So there was always this narrative about black students in particular that we weren't successful in education settings and somehow we had these deficits, right? And so I wanted to challenge that, and I started reading literature on highly successful academic students. And one of the things to consider is that HBCUs were instrumental in the success of black college students. And so I thought that I would want to have that particular focus. And even some of the leading scholars in gifted education come out of HBCU as well, like Martin Jenkins. And so like there are key like scholars who have come from the HBCU context that have impacted education in society broadly. But in my research area, at the time I was writing my dissertation, like 2014, the literature on high achieving black male students was focused majority in a predominantly white institution context to look at the impact of racism, racial microaggressions, racial battle fatigue, stereotype threat, achiever isolation was the idea one of my mentors, Dr. Sharon Fries-Brick, kind of described. And so it was that experience. But I knew from going to a HBCU for my doctoral program that when I was walking around Morgan State's campus, there was something else happening that wasn't reflected as well in the literature outside of a colleague of mine, Dr. Rob Palmer, and then Dr. Fred Bonner at the time. And so I just want to say, well, why don't we look at this same issue that we're looking at the PWI context, but look at the impact of HBCUs and what are they doing to support black male students? And so that's where my dissertation started from. And that's why I continue to do some of that work. But at the core of my work is on success, and in particular in education settings for black students, K through PhD. And so all that work around success informs what we do at Dunn dissertation because we are all centered around student success at its core. That's what we want. We want to see students who enter a doctoral program leave the doctoral program with the degree in hand. And the dissertation we know is the bottleneck for many students. And so we focus our attention on that part of the problem. I think for a lot of researchers, we want to solve everything, but sometimes we have to figure out what is our piece of the pie that we are going to focus on and then be laser focused on it. And then let the next student, let the next colleague figure out the next part of the puzzle, if you will. So that's the kind of the story of why I've been doing some of the stuff that I've been doing and how my research has then informed a lot of the beginning work of Dunn dissertation.
All right. And can you just talk a little bit about the reach of how many students that Dunn dissertation has reached out to and also assisted in the dissertation process, just in case maybe the audience doesn't know?
Man, it's at this point it's thousands because like from our direct programs, we have more than 200 folks that have like invest in and work with us through our programs that you may have learned about online. But our content is reached thousands of people. I mean, on most of my platforms, YouTube, we have like 22,100 subscribers. So, we have about 7,000 on LinkedIn. We have thousands of folks, Facebook. So it's like, I don't even know the true reach of this stuff, because we get text messages all the time from people saying, hey, I couldn't join the program, but these text messages, these weekly affirmations really helped me get through the process. If you're watching this, you've been someone that has helped, like, drop in the comments, let us know. And then also, if you're part of the text message community, send us a text and let us know, because sometimes we send these texts out and we don't know if we don't hear from you all, because we do respond. So it's definitely in the thousands at this point who we've been able to benefit, impact. And then we do workshops at different universities across the country. So like it's definitely, thousands and thousands of students we've been able to help, both directly and indirectly through workshops. And then, we've sold a couple thousand copies of the 14 Secrets book. So, again, I don't know all the folks who have access to the book. So there's so much happening that we're truly appreciative of as a company. But yeah, we help thousands of students at this point.
All right. And my other thing I wanted to mention is in the book, you
Yeah.
talk about the need for a reality check partner
Oh, yeah.
to avoid dissertation intoxication. And I kind of use that strategy in my classroom, really from reading your book. There was a lot of takeaways that I could use in the high school classroom. Like I work with math small group instruction, and I use that strategy on having the students have a reality check partner, like check the work. Does it make sense? So, can you talk about what that reality check partner looks like and the dissertation process?
Yeah, that reality check partner is someone's going to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, you haven't been taking care of yourself. I need for you to do something different. And in my case, it was my wife, Renee, who was CEO of Done Dissertation. To give you an example, one time I was still in the classroom as a teacher at this point, but what my week looked like is that 2 to 3 days out of the week, I would get up at 6 a.m., drive about 45 minutes to my school, teach from 7 to about 3:30, get in the car, and I was driving an hour and a half from basically Northwest DC, Washington, D.C. to Baltimore to go to class. And so after that, I would go to class from 5. Really, class started at 4:30, but I never can get there on time. My professors knew, but I'll be from class from 5 to some nights 7:30. But then other nights when I had 2 classes in the night, I'll be here till 10. Then I would drive back an hour back home, and I did that for 3 years during coursework. And so it got to a point where Renee was like, "Hey man," like one day I left to go teach, and I left the refrigerator door open, I left the phone off the hook, and I left the
Oh,
door slightly
it,
open. Man, it was a struggle. It was a struggle.
yeah.
So at that point, I need somebody. She was like, "Hey, get it together." And so you need that person that's going to like tap you and say, "Hey, you haven't been, doing your workouts or whatever it is that you have to do for you for self care." You need somebody that's going to kind of keep tabs on you, and they don't have to be involved with an academic setting, or they don't have to be a fellow doc student. They can be, but you just need somebody who's going to keep it real with you and going to say, "Hey, I need for you to have a better balance. Maybe not fully because you're locked in, but making sure that you're taking care of yourself." That's why I started to see that with students I was working with. They'd be so hyper focused on the dissertation that they lost sight of all the other things that was happening in their life. And so when that starts to happen, you can easily crash and burn. Hey,
All
Renee
right.
says, "Tell the story." Yeah, it's true.
That's funny you mentioned that because there was a virtual open house for John Hopkins School of Education, and the student asked the question on what's the most successful strategy a doctoral student can have. And the professor said something I didn't really think about. He said, you don't want to have this weekend warrior mentality with the dissertation or any coursework where you don't do anything the whole week, Monday through Friday, and the weekend comes and you turn into a weekend warrior
Mm-hmm.
where you take all the work and you're trying to complete everything and you're trying to crunch out all your writing. He said it's a process to always break it down and take the work gradually, day by day, and don't be this weekend warrior.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I agree with that sentiment. I talk about that in the book a lot. That was like a key component. Let me see. I have to pull up what chapter it is, for folks who have the book. And yeah, both in really chapter 1, we kind of set the foundation. When I talk about incremental writing, I'm getting at, I think, what that professor was saying. Kind of like, you can't. Some people can do it. So I wrote this book in 2021. I wrote it in 2020. Came out in 2021. I still believe in the incremental writing. However, I have seen a few people who have been able to figure out a way to be the weekend warrior. I see them crash and burn though, but it has worked. So I can't say 100% that it does not work, but for the most part, I've seen people who apply that do crash and burn at some point in time, and it's not good to see. So I think slightly different than even when I wrote this initially, but I do see that the more consistent you are, the easier it is. Because let's say you do it today, you wrote today. When you write tomorrow, you can kind of remember what you were thinking about from yesterday. Well, if you write today, today what's today? Thursday. If you write today and you don't write until next Thursday, you got to kind of get back into the process and figure out, oh man, where was I at? What was I thinking? And so that's a struggle. And real quick, Kristen, I'm gonna get to your question here once we finish up this Q&A. I will get to your question. You asked a great question about strategies around writing a lit review. But do you have any other questions, thoughts, anything else for you?
One other question. Do you think you'll have a second edition of the book? Do you think?
That's a great question. I don't know, because I'm trying to think. I didn't want to make the book so big because there's more I could have included, but I just know folks don't have a lot of time to read stuff because you got all this other literature to read. I don't know. That's a good question because this book was more tactical in terms of like the mindset and approach to navigating the process. Because I know in our program, in our velocity program, we teach people like the intricacies of how to write a dissertation, like how to do it, how to think through all the steps and all that stuff. We do in our coaching program. Where the book, I wanted to give the strategy so folks can implement even if they don't work with us and they still have some aspects of it. So I don't know. That's a good question. I got to think about that, Renee. That's a good question. I haven't considered, but possibly in the future. I do have a book I do want to write though. It's on my board for first year students. So like if you're starting a doc program, what should you do? Because I think there's things that you can do during coursework that set you up nicely for success at the end. And so that probably will be, that's my idea for one of my next books is on for the first year student.
Do you think that book would take you into the second year too? Would it be relevant to second year doctoral student, third year doctoral student who's still in coursework?
Yeah, it'll be all the things that you should consider as you are navigating, you're being a student before you get to your dissertation. Because there's a lot of things around, navigating relationships with professors early in your coursework, because that sets you up for success when you need a chair for your dissertation. To some of the hidden curriculum of academia around conferences and like how to connect with faculty to write for publication. There's all these other things that some folks know to do, and some folks don't have access and don't know the game. And so, yeah, the book will be centered around some of those aspects.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Goins, really for answering all these questions, really putting together a framework of done dissertation to really guide students throughout the doctoral process. So I really appreciate that. And I know you're doing a lot of research on HBCUs.
For sure.
I go to HBCUs, so that's something really important, really good to see.
That's what's up. Yeah, definitely. I appreciate you for being on the show. Definitely. Thank you so much for being part of the community. And yeah, we'll definitely interact on text and all that stuff sometime in the near future. So, but good luck to you in your doc program too. Whichever one. Have you decided? Did you decide yet? Or are you still trying to figure it out?
So I've applied to 3 programs. I got accepted to 1.
Okay.
So I have an interview for the second program I applied to, and I'm still waiting to hear back from the third. They'll respond back by March.
Okay. How do you think your interviews went? Because I'll give you some strategy real quick as you prepare for that last one.
So the first interview I did, talk to the department chair. I was talking more about literacy instruction, data-driven instruction, and a lot of instructional methodologies. So it was really more of a conversation.
Okay.
More than a formal interview. I talked a little bit about my background, what I was interested in. And that's how the first interview went. So the second interview I have is going to be next week, and it's going to be a group interview.
Okay.
But they said you don't have anything to prepare for it.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you have time to talk about different interview strategies.
Yeah, I'll give you quick things, and I want to get to, we have some questions pile up in the chat, so I want to get to those and come back. But I'll give you some quick things to consider. One is that making sure that you are clear about what your research, at least right now, what your idea around your research agenda or area might be, because I think faculty are trying to figure out, does this student align with the needs of our with our program goal, like mission, and then also do we have faculty who would be able to mentor and support this student. So that's always like a big consideration for doc programs. And then the second piece is just making sure um, that you understand who the faculty are in that program and seeing ways that your work might align to theirs. So if it comes up, you can say, actually, I've been very interested in the work of so and so that focuses on this because it connects to my work in this particular way. I think that will make it a lot easier for a committee to say, you know what, this person actually researched our program, they know who our faculty are. And even for the faculty that your work really aligns with, maybe read a piece or two so you actually know their work, like not just saying something that you read off the website, versus like actually intimately have read their work and know what they talk about. Those would be the two things I think if you kind of do those, you'll be more than prepared for success in your interview.
All right. Thank you so
Cool.
much, Dr. Ramon. And
Appreciate you.
I'm following the text message
Cool.
daily chats that you sent. So it's really informative. Thank you so much and keep up the amazing work,
No
really.
problem. Appreciate you, man. We'll talk soon. All right.
Take care.
Take care.
All right.
Peace. All right. So I appreciate y'all for holding tight. I hope that was helpful as we started to think through some things. And Elal, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. If you're interested in being on, feel free to just use this link, www.thedunderstation.com/live. And you'll be a form that you fill out, and then you'll pop into my Zoom, and I can bring you on to chat. All right. So there were some questions that were coming in. I want to make sure we address those. First question. Shout out to Kristen. Kristen's my advisee, so I love this. Okay. Kristen, what strategies can you use in coursework writing assignments to develop the skills needed for writing a strong literature review, even when the assignments don't explicitly require it? Let's see. Coursework writing assignment, develop the skills needed for. So sometimes if a assignment doesn't require it, sometimes you may have to do things outside of the assignment to get that skill set. Like Kristen, I know you because you've been my student for 4 years. And so, Kristen, in your case, think about when we were in our first class in like LLC 744, when you were writing your proposal, right? And in that class, we did kind of like the intro section and then your methodology. But that intro section was more like the style of writing in a literature review. So like you already know it, but you were engaging that style from the start in terms of engaging with the literature. But then also what you did, which was smart, and I would recommend it to a lot of students, is that they start figuring out opportunities to write for publication. So, you have your own solo author journal article that came out. So you went through that process, like engaging in this writing style that, got your work published, right? And any of the work that we did, editing the work that we did on the other article that we collaborated on. So like, I think some of those types of things are really important to build up that skill set. So sometimes it's not going to always be in the coursework just because every course has a different intent. So not every course is aligned to writing literature reviews, but sure enough, if the class is topic related where you can insert your own topic, I definitely think every course can be leveraged where you read literature in your area so that by the time you get to the dissertation phase, you are not, just trying to figure it out like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do with this literature? Because I don't know it quite yet. Whereas, in coursework, you're able to kind of have that opportunity to build your knowledge of literature review up. So, Kristen, I hope that was helpful, and shout out to you. And I'll be reading your literature review here shortly. I know you're working on that. It's submitted that for review. All right. And so let's see. We got Christian said first time attending. Well, thank you so much for dropping in and engaging with us. I appreciate it. He said first time attending. What strategies and advice do you have for selecting the right instrument? And is there a copy? And is there any copyrights that you have to be aware of as you write chapter 3? Thank you. Christian, what could be very helpful is if you can give me a little more insight about your topic, because honestly, the instrument is going to be predicated by your research question. So, like, before you even think about instrument, it's like, what is my research question? Because I'm gonna give you an example. Let's say, for instance, your question was about the experiences of a group of people. Let's say, for instance, that doesn't even align itself to quantitative work, so we wouldn't even need an instrument. So like I always want to make sure we think about research question first, and then we figure out the method in order to answer the question second. So I think about our question. So based on your question, there may be particular instruments that align with that question. So again, if you let me know in the chat, or if you want to come on and just talk through, you can talk through it real quick. Again, if you want to be on live, again, I can give you more insight. But again, if you want to do that, you go to www.thedunderstation.com/live. And for those of you who are going to be working on like literature reviews and things, come to our upcoming literature review workshop. You can go to this link here, thedunderstation.com/workshop. And so, Christian, I'll come back to your question. And so when you're thinking about the instrument, just depends on the question. And depending on the area of research, there may be a number of instruments that you have at your disposal and maybe only one. It just really depends. Or you may have to cobble some together where you take a couple questions from one instrument, a couple questions from another, in order to be able to measure the variables and constructs that you want to measure. So that's going to really make a determination. And then copyrights, it depends on the instrument. Some instruments are like behind a paywall, so you have to pay the researcher for them. Others, if they're published in a study, you can use them. What I like to do, and this is just one of my little hacks, when I'm leveraging and using someone's instrument, I actually email, just presuming that the person is living, I email the professor and I say, hey, I'm interested in using your instrument in a study that I have upcoming. Are there any other papers that you have written, either technical papers or anything else on the instrument that I may have missed? And I did this with a project I was doing, and the authors of the instrument actually sent me a couple of technical papers that explain more about the instrument, its psychometric properties. Like they did such a great job of like unpacking some of the things for me. It was extremely helpful. Had I not sent them that email and just, cited them and said I used the instrument, I would have got that insight. And then they were interested in saying, hey, what did you end up using with our survey? Like send us the paper. So like that becomes really important to build a community of scholars. And you'd be surprised, depending on the instrument, there may be a researcher who hasn't had anybody leverage or use their instrument yet. And so you might be one of the first ones. And that's really exciting for a researcher when people are actually, using their work. And so, Christian, that would be my comment and thought to you in terms of how to think through that process. And again, around copyrights, around chapter 3. And again, you would mention and cite the scholar, right? You always got to cite your sources, especially instruments, you got to cite where you got it from. And Kristen, shout out to you, Chris. I appreciate you. Yeah, you make the job easy, Kristen. I appreciate you. And so I'm just going back to make sure I didn't miss anything. Let's see. Chris, I see your comment from earlier. You said this is promising. There's hope in this dissertation struggle. Yes, there is. And if you got to a point where you're like, look, I need some help, I need some support, this is what we do in our Velocity coaching program. We help students like you really navigate the process. And so if you would like help, need that, you go to www.velocitydissertation.com, fill out the form to schedule a consultation, and we can help to kind of talk with you to figure out how we can support you to the finish line. Oh, and Christian, I see your next comment, and you say drive right now. Oh no, Christian, please, whatever you do, I don't need you crashing, nothing like that. I got you. I appreciate you though. Yeah. He said, but I'm looking to do a qualitative study on getting insights from mentors serving Latino students. My focus is on the mentor and their experience supporting this population. So yeah, this is exactly why I came to my question about instrument. If you're doing a qualitative study, we are not concerned necessarily with instrument in the same way. You may develop interview questions, but again, this is not the same piece in terms of thinking about the need for an instrument. So that is going to be really important for you to consider. But yeah, we will, based on your research question, you're going to develop, potential interview questions for your participants. And so, that's going to be aligned. There's a number of things going to be aligned to your theoretical framework, to your research question, and that's going to inform the type of interview questions that you're going to ask. But again, there's a lot of strategy around how to do that. And we help our clients do stuff like that all the time. But that's a great question that you're considering. And so we have another guest that's going to join us live. So if y'all give me a minute, I'm going to bring them on. So Jerome, I see you have joined us. If you just want to unmute, I will bring you in. But if there are any other questions from folks that are watching, go ahead and drop them in the comments. Or if you want to ask your question live, feel free. Just jump on. If you go to theundissertation.com/live, you'll fill out a media form, and then you can jump on. And I'll answer your question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't really have a question. I just wanted to switch over from LinkedIn to the Zoom.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. Well, Jerome, you guys just stay right there. Then you're cool.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. All right. Other questions? I'm just looking through, see if there's anything else popping up for folks. But again, these are some of the things y'all asking some great questions and things to consider. But yeah, it's always being mindful of like being prepared for the things that just come across in this process. And so A lot of times when you're working on these things, you got life, you got all these things that could be in the way or feel in the way, but just know that you have the ability to do them and navigate this process successfully. Trust me, because if you kind of look around, if you're in this space long enough, you'll recognize like, man, and you might be wondering this thought to yourself. So I'll say it out loud for you, like, how did that person finish? They're not even like the sharpest, like, but they still finished. They got a doctorate. And so like this process is not a matter of if you will finish, it's a matter of how willing you are to be persistent to finish, honestly. And this is now looking back, having finished my dissertation 10 years ago, it's definitely a matter of persistence in this process. But yeah, if there are questions as you all are watching, let me know in the comments, something resonating with you, let me know. And I'd be happy to address those questions. And again, if you're someone that's working on the literature review, if you're one of my students, do not come to this workshop. We'll talk another way to talk through this. But if you are someone who needs the support, you go to www.thedundissertation.com/workshop, and you can register for our upcoming literature review workshop, so we can help support folks who are writing their dissertation literature review. This will be the most impactful for. And so if you're interested and want to attend, feel free to grab a ticket from that link. You can pause the video, go to the website, and you grab a ticket right from there. Are there any last questions? Because I'll wrap up. We're about an hour or so. I usually like these episodes to be an hour and a half. And so I'd be happy to answer any last questions, things that you are working on before we finish for tonight. All right, so Jerome, I see your question. You say, do you have any advice on how to manage the resources references for the lit review? When we think about managing these resources, sometimes it's a matter of some people are using like the automated stuff nowadays. You got the Zotero, I don't know, people are using Mendeley, all those ones. For me, those routes just never worked because I used to use Mendeley and then they stopped supporting Mac, and I was like, I'm through with this, all the electronic or digital reference things. So I just keep an old school, just a list of like all the references I read and that I'm using, and then I just insert them into my reference list at some point. And it becomes like a last part of my like writing process is that literally to print out the whole paper and then have my reference list. And I'm literally like going through, all right, on page, okay, I cited this, and I'm going to my reference list on my computer. Okay, I cited this one, I check it off. And I literally just check it off on paper. It's very old school and archaic, I get it. But some of those other approaches just haven't worked well for me. I do like Zotero out of all the ones that I have tried recently. I do like Zotero in terms of like auto-generating reference lists and stuff like that. But yeah, that's always something to consider. And you have to have a way to like organize and all those things of what you're reading. And so that can be very individual specific in terms of how you want to organize. But at our lit review workshop, for some folks, we will talk about some strategies potentially around organizing what you read. But I know what you're working on right now, Jerome, so I can't really give you the insight on that at the moment. But I understand that aspect of the question too. And Christian, I'm glad that it was helpful in terms of insights around what you're working on. So I'm glad that was helpful. No problem. Rooting for you, Jerome. We're rooting for you. All right, other questions, things that y'all asked some great stuff tonight. Thank you so much, Lau, for jumping on live. Again, we'll do these we'll send announcements out. Again, our text message community will send to people first, so you'll know when we're doing these. And if you have questions that want to be on live, you'll be able to do so. But again, it's great to hear from you all. It's one thing to be talking to a camera and then have no interaction outside the comments. So it's great to have folks on live. This is something Nate and I were talking about doing. I was like, this is a great idea to have some more live interaction outside of maybe some of the workshops and things that folks may or may not attend. So yeah, looking forward to supporting y'all. Y'all asking great questions. I'm so excited for the work that is to come from these dissertations. We just don't want y'all to be stuck in this process forever. So whatever you do, like leverage the content, leverage what we're doing, leverage the insights that we're trying to provide so you get the insights you need to finish. That is our whole goal, is to help you all finish. And so we're looking forward to doing that. And with that said, it is about to wrap this thing up. But again, if you want to and need support with your literature review, we have a workshop happening next week. If you go to www.thedundissertation.com/workshop, you can learn more about the workshop and grab your ticket. And if you're someone at the point where you're like, look, I need help, I need someone to help guide me through this process, We've built a whole infrastructure at Done Dissertation to help students do that. And so if you need that type of support, you can go to www.velocitydissertation.com to learn more about our program and to schedule a consultation with Renee to talk more about how Done Dissertation can help you to the finish line. And so with that said, I want to say thank you all so much for watching this episode of Done Dissertation Q&A Live. I'm your host, Dr. Ramon Goings. And until next time, I wish you all a Done Dissertation. Y'all take care.